With that, I'll call the meeting to order and ask folks to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance for our October meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. There's really no need for review and approval of the minutes. Our last two meetings, we did not have quorum, so we had some excellent discussions, but no votes and no action items. And let's allow the agenda to stand as the minutes of the meeting. We pretty carefully followed the agenda and just had some good and robust discussion. I do have some organizational issues to raise. In advance, I'd like people to know that two of our most stalwart and steadfast members are coming up to the ends of their second terms, which means they have to rotate off, and that would be our minute taker and our veterinarian. And so we will have gaps in our person power. And if you have people that you know who might be able to fill those gaps, I'd like to be able to get back to a full slate as quickly as possible. And then the other piece with regard to personnel is that we will elect, at the end of this year, we'll elect officers again. And if anybody wants to, I'd encourage people to think about taking on leadership roles. Let me just leave it at that. And then the last organizational issue, I do apologize because theoretically we are a 5:30 third Monday of every month. If you look historically, we are not a 5:30 third Monday of every month. There are a number of reasons why that might be. One is the frequency of Monday holidays, which kick us out of there. Two is the frequency with which the Board of Trustees requires flexibility for the use of the room, and that boots us. I've tried as much as I can to get it as regular as possible, but instead of that, I did ask that Mary Ann Cassidy and Kevin make available our dates and our schedules. I asked people to look at those and try their best to make themselves available for the dates as posted, knowing that highly likely things will change. So that's all I have for organizational issues. Anybody else have any comments in that regard? I did not put a Radnor inspections report on because we have fully transitioned to having a county Department of Health doing our inspections. If there were issues that would arise, I think that they would filter in, but I think it's mostly routine business. And Alex, I don't know whether you are continuing to watch that or not, but if Alex watches that, and if he sees anything, I think he'll bring it to our attention. Is that accurate? Thank you. And with that, I'd like to get down to some of the old business that we have. And I have first on the list, I have the oral care van with Dr. D. And let me turn the microphone over to Dr. Desidue.
So we had the oral cancer, the oral care van at Jefferson this past weekend. It was a huge success, sponsored by Colgate. So I wanted to use that as a test case before we went to the school district for Radnor Township. And we treated about 75 kids on Saturday morning from 8 to 1. So they're willing to come to the schools. It's elementary school only, so the ages are 1 to 12, so it would have to be the elementary school. There are 2 dental chairs in the van. The van is like a huge bus, and it was, like I said, it was a huge success. So I'll take the next step to contact the school district and to set up which elementary school we want to go to first, and we can do multiple. Schools. The beauty of it is Colgate has this down to a science. So the consent forms would go to the parents a week or so beforehand. The parents would sign the consent form if they want their child to be examined in the van. It's a pure examination only, so there's no actual treatment. And then if the child needs any dental care, they'll be sent home with a slip that they can send to their dentist and have the procedures done. So, more to come.
I might suggest you work with Jenny to work with the school board to select Jenny Lesage, the representative on the board. Okay? Excellent. Thanks. I think that's actually pretty. Ian, can you hear me? And if you can you turn on the projector and put up the slide that Ian was kind enough to, of course, we had to drag you out. I thought it was pretty telling that in the New England Journal, one of the feature articles in last week's New England Journal was heat-related illness management, and it was, this is the key points slide, and I thought we should take a minute because we have spent significant time on the heat issue, and it's not likely to go away. So I'd like to go through it just for a moment. Climate change is causing increasingly frequent and severe heat waves, resulting in increases in the incidence of heat-related illness and exacerbations of heat-sensitive conditions. This was not our imagination. This is at a premium journal, national level, that this is brought to attention, and I think we can give ourselves a little bit of credit for being involved there. Actually, we have to give our public some credit for also bringing it to our attention, and thank our board and our township employees and the newly formed Delaware County Department of Health for keeping their eye on the ball. Heat exposure, individual susceptibility, sociocultural factors, poverty, lack of social cohesion, all play in, and we're fortunate to have pretty good conditions in this township, but always the least fortunate among us are the most susceptible, and we need to keep that in mind. And the rest, I think we've been there. It can be mild to life-threatening, can be as a threat to cardiac, respiratory, and kidney function. There's heat stroke, and it is preventable, and that, I think, it was our role in our public participation. One of the reasons I wanted to bring this up is I also think that some of our focus on environmental issues is every bit as important as our focus in at the tail end, that is to say, with the horrendous heat, trying to protect people. But at the front end, reduce, reuse, recycle, I have it in my mind to try to put more pressure on the township to do as much as we can. I think it would be wonderful if I would live to see a fully electric fleet for our township vehicles and all of the things that we can do, we actually can do today, that would put a de minimis on our footprint and improve future quality of life in our township. And that's why I brought that up. Any comments or questions?
You'll be glad to know that last night we voted for at least 2 hybrid vehicles from the police force. So.
Excellent. Excellent. What may I ask? What make you go with?
I'm not sure.
But they're police patrol cars?
Police cars, yeah.
Excellent. Can't tell you
They
how
might
thrilled
be
I am.
Ford, but
Say again?
they might be Ford, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
I read it and it just went in one ear and
Excellent.
out the other.
Like I say, I'd love it if the school district got all zero emissions buses. I'd love it if our vehicles and our plant, and as solar improves, the possibility that we could drive our township through solar energy. Thanks. Next up is follow-up on two projects that Joan has been spearheading, so I'm going to turn it over to Joan.
As far as the wildlife signage goes, so the state roads, I guess, are sufficiently signed. That's the feeling. But the township roads, the next thing is they would like a list of the roads that are most heavily traveled by wildlife and where there are, dead animals. So I'm working to come up with that so we can identify locations. I would appreciate any input from all of you if you would take notice of roads you're driving on, particularly at night, where you see foxes, raccoons, or whatnot crossing, deer, or where you see dead animals. I would really appreciate the input, because I obviously don't drive around the entire township. Only my traveled routes is what I'm most familiar with, okay?
I can tell you right off the top on Conestoga Road regularly, on Newtown Road regularly. I'll start writing it down. Thank you.
I would think that Bill Gallagher could help you as well, and that he takes care of most of the roadside dead animals, removing the bodies, so.
Yeah, I've been working with Bill on that, and he'd like further input from me on which roads specifically.
So if we don't have good data, is there something that we can do to get, obviously perfection being the enemy of good, but good enough data to move this forward? Is there, what can we do?
I thought I had already provided that actually back in the spring, but apparently more data has been requested.
So I also saw that you pointed out that deer crossing signs are not the only thing or the be-all and end-all, but they are a whole heck of a lot better than nothing, right? I mean, if a deer crossing sign, maybe it won't have the same thing as a high animal death area or something like that, but at least some people might see it and might react.
For sure, and I don't know if it's a function of the size of roads that make certain areas more likely to have deer collisions, but it seems like the deer collisions are more along the main routes, like Westchester Pike, for example, thinking of outside the township, and the larger roads. But it seems like the roads that are darker and sort of dark roads that are twisty-turny, those are the ones that seem to be most at risk for the smaller animals. Foxes, I mean, when I go down Roberts Road, literally every time I go down, there are foxes just going back and forth, and I always think about if I had, if we had surveillance monitoring cameras, all you'd see is probably just constant crisscrossing of different animals. So the likelihood that somebody's going to be coming into contact is very high. And the counterintuitive thing is that oftentimes these darker, more narrow, poorly lit roads that have lots of bends, people fly down, and there's no way you can avoid an animal, let alone a tree. So
I think the barrier roads, like Westchester Pike is a barrier road, and I think that for the most part the wild animals follow the water, which is why the smaller roads are their highways. So the healthier the population of our wildlife, the better place we live in. And thank you for your efforts in this regard. Any other comments?
You're welcome.
Yeah, quick question. Is the proposal to put a specific new kind of signage up along the roads where these deaths are occurring, or go ahead?
Yeah, it's a new type of signage that's not just, there is deer crossing signage on some of the, very few, but some of the state roads in the township. But these would be wildlife, sort of a generic otter type animal that covers everything from, Canadian geese and turtles to raccoons.
I was just thinking that,
And there is a host of different types of signs that are available.
that's interesting. I was just thinking that if I see a deer crossing sign, that's just going to make me slow down regardless. So, I mean,
Exactly.
in my mind, it doesn't really make a difference what's on the sign. I just know that I might hit something if I'm not careful along this road, so.
Yeah.
But
Wish
I-
everybody drove like that. I can
Yeah,
say,
I'll say the non-deer signs, like there's a duck/goose crossing sign at the high school. I can admit I notice those more because I see the deer signs around so much. I notice them more.
well, maybe that suggests that an array of animal cameos, each of them different. I can tell you, I drive down to Ridley Park frequently. There's some good fishing down there. And on some of the back roads going down there, I see a sign that just cracks me up every time. It's called, they call it Important Bird Area. And I can't tell whether it's important birds or an important area for birds, but it always catches my eye. So thanks
That's really funny.
thanks for the good work.
Sure.
Can you give us the update on the ordinances?
No updates. I've sought them and have not received them.
All right. Is there anything that Maggie or I could do to move that project forward?
Possibly, yeah.
Well,
possibly.
we'll take this offline and
we
let us
can-
know?
yeah.
Okay. So the next puts me back on the microphone. Fall vaccines and COVID. COVID's a really tough topic right now because it really doesn't matter what I say. It's not just in the United States, friends that have traveled in Europe. The American population has decided that COVID is over, whether it is or not, and it's not. There's probably good reason for that. For the overwhelming majority of people, it probably does not represent substantial health risk. And I think it was an 18 to 55 population, 50% of the people actually were asymptomatic. But there are people for whom it is not over. That's number one. Number two, the virus may not be done with us, even though we may be done with a virus. There are outbreaks that are occurring in England, France, Italy, Germany. It is not at all clear what the clinical syndromes that are resulting are, but there are cases that are ticking up. There are new variants, and although I've for a while now believed that with an R value approaching that of measles, it's going to be hard to displace the BA.5, and unless there's a new clinical syndrome associated with some of the other mutations, it probably just represents continuing phase of endemicization. But Mike Osterholm out at CIDRAP, if an optimistic thought ever crossed his mind, he'll go in the closet and come back out when it goes away. But he's not at all certain that we're done with variants, and he's not at all certain that this will not be a challenging or problematic winter. There have been upticks in hospitalizations and deaths associated with the Omicron peak over the winter. I can't get anybody to tell me what people are in the hospital for or they're dying of, but the numbers are there. And the point that he makes is that we have a highly strained and highly stressed healthcare system. It's the plasticity has been taken out of the healthcare system by the last 2.5 years, so that less of a stress will represent more of a problem. So I really think that we have to keep people aware in that regard. And the other thing that is coming that we will be talking about in the years that come up is that long COVID is starting to sort out. It is not a trivial problem. Estimates are 10 to 30 million people. The trend now is to consider some of the long COVID syndromes to be like chronic fatigue syndrome or ME, and almost certainly they are. And the other piece that you did actually probably see things, the Protective Services Task Force is recommending screening for anxiety for kids. I think that we have to consider that a COVID byproduct. With that, actually right now, I strongly recommend that everybody get their flu shot now. My perfect date has always been October 15, but you try and match up the biggest window of protection with the biggest risk, and so starting November 1st, you'll get a little bit of loss if there's a late epidemic, but you'll cover the greatest risk. CDC has said that you can get both COVID and flu vaccines simultaneously. I don't see any reason to do that unless you live 50 miles from the place that you're getting your shots and it's hard to get in and to get out. I strongly recommend anybody with any risk get a bivalent as well. Uptake has been very slow in that regard, but citing Osterholm again, he kind of thought that perfect day for the bivalent, not really knowing what's going to happen, how much protection we'll have, and how long the protection will last, whether or not there will be clinical syndromes that are challenging. He kind of recommended November 1st, so his recommendations were October 1st for your flu and November 1st for your bivalent. Anybody else have any questions, considerations, comments? If Jenny were here, I would ask her to give us an update on what's going on in the school district, but as far as I can tell, locally, there is only rare and sporadic flu so far. There are places where there is epidemic flu, and I don't remember exactly where, but not nearby, and we're kind of percolating with regard to levels with percent positivity being the last remaining really leading indicator. I don't think that case numbers are really helpful because most cases are home testing and not captured. So percent positivity is hanging in right around just under the 10% mark, which we would have considered scary at one point, but now is either not so bad or pretty good, depending whether you're a pessimist or an optimist. And with that, I'm going to turn the microphone over to Lisa and Alex for updates, introductions, and information on our student intern program.
Just a little comment on COVID. I do follow the school district is still maintaining that weekly COVID count, and I look at it probably every other week or so. And cases, I mean, there's definitely cases in the school district, but they don't seem to be spiking. It'll be one school 1 week and a different school another week. So we are pleased to have our student interns for this year with us today. Their names are Ray and Khadijah, and I thought they'd take the opportunity to introduce themselves, say what grade they're in, et cetera, and how they became interested in the board. But I told them, no big deal, we're all very friendly here. And then we'll do a quick discussion about topics they're considering for their intern project.
Hello, my name is Ray Luwan. I'm currently a senior at Radnor High School. I saw the BOH intern through just Schoology. One of our counselors was promoting it to most of the juniors and the seniors in our school. And then I thought it would be a cool opportunity to see like the inner workings behind just like who like makes the decisions or like discusses like predominant health topics in the township. So I do med careers currently this year with Khadijah, so I'm looking to go down possibly like a medical track. So I thought that this would be a good experience for now and in the future to see if this track is right for me. So thank you.
Thank you, Ray. Welcome.
My name is Khadijah, and I also saw the post through Schoology. I'm also a senior currently. I saw this post through Schoology. One of our counselors introduced this to us, and I met with him to like talk about different opportunities that I could take, and he personally told me about this. That's when I sent in my application. I've been thinking about going into medicine for some time now, and I really thought this would be a great opportunity to open my eyes to see if this is really what I want to do with my life. Thank you.
Thank you, Khadijah, and welcome.
So one thought was we let the interns kind of figure out what their project is, but we thought it might be a good idea to kind of bring what ideas they're having to the board, because maybe somebody will be like, oh, I know somebody who could assist with that, or I have some expertise in that, or I can provide a really good resource. They've been, thinking about topics here for the past 2 weeks or so. So I thought maybe they'd share like what they're possibly considering, and obviously we'll be deciding for sure what they're doing in the next month or so, and then come up with, how to accomplish what they want to learn about the topic.
Okay, so my original idea for a plan, or at least for the project, was something that focuses on not distracted driving in general, but just like the effects of like sleep deprivation or possibly stress and anxiety on students that drive, or just I guess in population in general, especially as a student with like college applications, SATs, and other exams. I found that like some nights I'd be going to sleep at like 3, waking up at like 7, and getting into the car and driving to like either the gym or to school. And I found that sometimes like my perception or like reaction time would be, I guess, hindered in some sense while driving to these places. I guess it's good interplay in like many other things, like especially like maybe like the animals that you guys talked about before, like being like deprived of sleep, or possibly like being stressed about something else would cause you to miss like possibly like a deer or like a fox, rabbit jumping from your car. So I guess like this topic I thought could maybe like branch out or spread to like different aspects of just like township driving safety. Yeah.
I was thinking about 2 ideas that I could possibly do. Both of them have to do with mental health. The first one is how socioeconomic status relates to mental health, and there have been many findings where a low socioeconomic status can like hinder your mental health, and like there are differences between having a high socioeconomic status and a low socioeconomic status, and how that relates to mental health. And I was thinking that like personally, like I'm an immigrant and I came from a third world country, and I moved to the States, and we moved to this township because of like the good school district. But I have like my socioeconomic status is different than most of my peers, and I could say that that has affected me personally, especially mentally. So I would like to see like how, like I would like to like find the data on like how many people in school are affected by that. And my second one has to do with what Ray said. I want to talk about like mental health and sleep deprivation, especially for like students right now, and especially for seniors. Colleges want us to get like many extracurriculars and have like amazing grades and sometimes unattainable GPAs. And I just want to like get the data in from like students, and like how they're dealing with their mental health, and how they're dealing with like not getting enough sleep, trying to focus on like college applications, extracurriculars, SAT prep, and all of that stuff. Thank you.
So we had discussed that they can work together on a project, or if they decide they are, more interested in working separately on separate projects, although their class schedule seems like it coincides pretty nicely to work on a project together. So I don't know if anybody had any input, thoughts, ideas for the interns.
I mean, I'll just say I think, all of those topics seem, like wonderful topics that you both put a lot of thought into. So I think, that's great. I think, in the past we've had the students mostly work together, but that is ultimately, your choice if you have a topic that you're passionate about. I think we did say, we could adjust the presentation time based on whether it's together or split up. But great job on brainstorming those topics. I think those are.
I have several things I'd like to say. What a big surprise that is. But I wonder if anybody else has any comments before I dive in here.
I'll just add to the comments that were made that the impact of socioeconomic status, the social determinants of health, is a major topic of exploration in healthcare these days, and it's something that's probably going to, in the coming years, have a pretty profound impact on how health services are planned. and how the insurers reimburse providers of healthcare. So I think that you would be on the cutting edge to investigate that and come forward with some interesting findings, and I think it would serve you well to understand where healthcare is going and potentially for your own career building.
I'd like to explore that because when you first said that, I thought you were going to go the other way. With the incredible amount being invested in large organizations evaluating socioeconomic, racial disparities in an array of different healthcare areas, I think that you would you'd compete with, so I wouldn't say that it's an area that I would avoid, but I would, this would lead to the first thing I was going to say. I think you have to focus. So if you're going to do that, what would you be focusing on? And I think that takes me to the next point that I would make, which is I think that this is a great opportunity for you to learn a couple of things. One is you may do your own. The mentors are Lisa and Alex, and if you want to do individuals, that would be fine. But I would argue that in your life moving forward, working in teams, working in multiples is a really important skill, and I would consider this an opportunity in a mentored and safe setting to work as a team. So I would strongly recommend that you don't break tradition and that you stay as doing it as a single topic. That's number one. Number two, I also think that you're fortunate here to get an opportunity to see how teams work or how projects are done. And I would recommend that you go online and look up SMART goals. I always forget what they are, but it has meaning in that
It's
if you
strategic, measurable,
specific,
attainable.
measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. I would strongly recommend, and this is back to focus, think about what is something that you could actually measure. Now, it doesn't have to be a project that measures something, but if you did a project, can you measure something? What would it be? Could you do it? And what would the impact be? Or if you want to do something, actually do something, well, how do you measure the impact of what you do? And so I actually, it sounds like everybody else likes the socioeconomic. I actually like the distracted. It doesn't even have to be distracted driving. It could be distraction in class. So I think you have two opportunities. I think you need to beat it up. I think you need to focus. My advice is you do it as a pair. You look at what SMART goaling is, and that you get a hold of something that you can get yourself around, and you don't just end up drowning in something that's huge. Socioeconomic difference, that's a huge topic. Distracted driving is a huge topic. What can you focus in on and actually do? That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I think that would be our goal over the next month, is to kind of delve in, decide which topic, and then, what kind of measurable or data can you use to, because we're not doing student surveys. So in what way can you gather this information without having to do student surveys? So we'll talk about that a little bit more, but I just thought we could bring up your topics that you're considering, with both of which, or all three of which, but they kind of overlap a little bit, would work well for a project.
Great. There's one other kind of old saw that I would throw in, and that is people who talk about writing. And their best advice to writers when they get started, write what you know. So I think that's a similar. Put yourself in a position that you can take it on because you have familiarity, you have availability and familiarity. Once again, welcome. I think it's been one of the most exciting aspects of the board here, and we look forward to working with you both as the year goes on.
So I just wanted to, while we're still discussing the student interns, if it's okay with the rest of the board, I do think we may want to take a look at standardizing it's fresh on my mind since we just did the selection process a little bit. We've kind of done it a little bit ad hoc in the past, and that's been okay because we were getting a pretty low number of applicants, and correspondingly, it was kind of easy to sort of see who the standouts were. This year we got 10 applicants for 2 slots, and there were, quite a few, well-qualified people that just, because of the number of slots that we had available, didn't end up being selected. And I am pleased to say that all of the students, the junior students, we talked about this, that I would give them the option if they wanted to get feedback on their application for next year, that all 5 of the junior students took me up on that opportunity. So, that's a good thing. But in terms of standardizing, what are we using as the criteria as a basis for selection, I think that might be something to kind of take a look at writing down. And, per our board policy, if you volunteer to do something, you generally have to, and I'm happy to do that.
You figured that one out,
Now
huh?
that I'm in talent acquisition, kind of take the lead on writing out a formal, this is what we're expecting. I think we haven't asked for transcripts in the past, but maybe now that we're getting the number of applicants we're getting, maybe that's something we want to ask for. Do we want to wait in favor of, if they've taken certain AP classes, like bio, or if they're in the medical careers class? Those are all things that I think, as, our students just kind of alluded to, colleges are asking more and more for different extracurricular activities. I think Board of Health internship certainly looks good on a college application. I would imagine that Radnor's graduating even more than, 10 future doctors and nurses and PsyDs and all of those kinds of things every year. So I think those numbers may continue to go up. So I did just want to kind of put that out there, that for the next meeting, I might submit something like that and we could take a look at that.
Alex, I think you're completely spot on. And I want to thank both Lisa and Alex, both actually worked over the summer to make this a smooth start and to get a quicker start. In the past, I don't think we've started to even gear up until November, and so I think that Ray and Khadijah are benefiting from that, and I think that I think we can tidy it up even more. And so thanks for volunteering. And anything else on this, Lisa, Alex? Oh, please.
Oh, no, I can wait.
Really quickly, I'll just again say congratulations on getting selected. As I just mentioned, this was a very competitive year. So,
yes, congratulations. And I'll just respond to the comments sort of in response to me. So I think where the action is with social determinants of health is, how do we take what we know, to your point, about the impact on health, and make change at the point of care. So people who are being impacted by social determinants of health, socioeconomic status, how do we change things for them? And I would say similarly, that would be very interesting in the area of sleep deprivation and distraction for driving. I think it'd be particularly important for people who are in high school. What actually works. I think for both of those topics, an interesting project would be to figure out what actually works and how can you take those messages to audiences that can do something with the information. For example, folks who are in charge of programming at the school, for example, and maybe to culminate the projects with actually presenting that information at the school, so to the right people, so that changes could be made or programs could be developed.
I think those are really salient comments. Thanks. Sounds like you're working on volunteering to get into the student intern program.
Happy to help.
With that, if there are no more comments on the student intern program, we are fortunate tonight to have a host guest speaker. Joan has, in case you hadn't noticed, a huge amount of passion about the animals that she cares for professionally, and wanted to do a presentation for the township on Radnor wildlife. So, are you keyed up?
Keyed up.
All right, excellent. Joan, it's all yours.
Okay, well, I'm going to be talking about the wildlife in Radnor Township and the challenges facing the animals in our township. So, this is Penn's Landing in 1682. I think this is sort of symbolic because the landing of William Penn in this area sort of began the era that was very bad for animals, as well as the Native Americans, but it was bad for animals, and a lot of the species were really wiped out and decimated. And right here we have a dead deer, so that's why I'm saying it's symbolic. At that time in the 1600s, Pennsylvania looked very different from today. It was full of hemlock forests and wetlands and meadows. And very quickly, and the animals that lived there were not only these animals, but if you notice, black bears. You know, I think there was a black bear sighting in this area maybe 2 years ago, and it was like a huge thing because it's not a thing here anymore. There are no black bear here. There were bison, even elk, wolves, and some extinct animals. One being the passenger pigeon was also here. So if you look at this, you know, we certainly don't see bobcats here. This area was full of them. Weasels, a lot of these animals. So very quickly, the land was developed, trees were cut down, the forests were decimated, and the landscape changed. By 1870, all the elk were gone. By 1900, wolves and mountain lions were gone. There was a rapid decimation of forest birds, particularly pileated woodpeckers, barred owls, wild turkeys, black burnie, and warblers, to name a few. Beavers, otters, and martins and mink were shot and trapped without regulation for the fur trade, but also for meat in some cases. A new conservation movement began in the late 1800s and early 1900s, where land started to be valued and preserved. And so a new kind of shrubby forest and meadow developed, and some species thrived, for example, grouses and thrushes. And it stayed in that state for quite a while. 1982 and the early 80s, through the next decade, there was unchecked urbanization throughout Pennsylvania. 1 million acres of woods, fields, and marshes were converted to human use in Pennsylvania, and 50% of the state wetlands were lost by that time since William Penn's arrival in the 1600s. The fallout for animals of the original 186 bird species in Pennsylvania, 21% are now in imminent danger. 16 are threatened or endangered, including in the wetlands animals, wetlands birds, the king rail, yellow-crowned night heron, American bittern, forest birds, the scarlet tanager, the wood thrush, and the black burnie and worm-eating warblers are particularly at risk. 6 species have been lost over the years, including the passenger pigeon and the heath hen. So you can see 3 of those birds in particular, the wood thrush, the decline in the population of the wood thrush since 1966, the scarlet tanager, not as sharp a decline, but a decline nonetheless. I don't think I've ever seen one of these. I have seen wood thrushes, but not many. I've never seen a bobwhite, and they were teeming in this area at one time. So they're endemic to this area. They're just gone, and you can see the decline from 1966 to the late 90s. The woodpeckers of Pennsylvania, there are 8 of them. The hairy woodpecker, pileated woodpecker, yellow-bellied sapsucker, northern flicker. This is the red-bellied red-bellied woodpecker. The ones I've seen, and you probably all recognize some of them. Certainly the red-bellied woodpecker, I believe, is the most prevalent in this area. The pileated woodpecker, I've seen those, yellow-bellied sapsucker, I don't think I've seen them. So the woodpeckers of Pennsylvania, the woodpeckers are the family Pisidae. Most are non-migratory. They're here all year round. They live in woodlands, live and dead trees. And the reason that's significant is this area particularly, there is what strikes me as wanton tree cutting. The tree trucks are everywhere. It's probably one of the most successful businesses in this area. If you want to open a tree cutting business, do it here in Radnor Township, because it's, cut now, explain later. If it looks like it possibly maybe lost a leaf, it's dead, cut it down. I think we really need to, in this township particularly, be mindful of trying to preserve trees, because trees are host to a lot of animals like woodpeckers. Also, trees are a good thing when we talk about climate change. We need trees. So woodpeckers eat insects, tree sap. Their use to us is that they remove a lot of insect pests. So they have a beneficial use to people. There are 4 types of skunk in Pennsylvania. The main one in this area is the only one in this area is the eastern striped skunk, Methodus. They're not incredibly common in this area anymore. Their range is northern Mexico to Canada. They're 5 to 7 pounds, about the size of a small cat. Their diet is insects and vertebrates and vegetation. They hibernate in ground dens where they can actually lower their body temperature in the winter by about 10 degrees. They give birth to 2 to 12 kits that are born in May, and their numbers have been reduced over the years by the fur trade, and then more recently by development. The Virginia opossum. You can't see this, I don't think, but it was described in 1613 in Jamestown by one of the settlers. It has a head like a swine, a tail like a rat, and the bigness of a cat. This is not an attractive animal. They're actually really scary when you encounter them, but they're not aggressive. They're more scared than anything. They're solitary, nomadic. They sort of wander around. They have a prehensile tail that they can hang from a tree. They're semi-arboreal, which means they live in trees and also on the ground. They live also in burrows, dark places. They are marsupials, and they have pouches as marsupials. They can give birth to up to 20 young. Their young are called joeys, just like kangaroos. And they're omnivores. And the use to people is they have high calcium needs, so they really like to scavenge. They'll eat roadkill. They need to eat bones. That's one of the things that they need to have in their diet. So skeletal material. Woodchucks, we've all seen these. They're very slow, which is one of the reasons you'll see them on the side of the road dead, because they are just slow. They're good swimmers, surprisingly. They live in burrows. They are solitary. They're a type of ground squirrel, actually not sound squirrel like I have, but ground squirrel. And they give birth to 3 to 5 pups in the spring. They're omnivores. Primarily herbivores, but they do eat grubs. 2 mammals that we almost never see anymore, the American marten, which is a type of weasel. And the reason that we don't see them is because their habitat is coniferous and deciduous forests, which we really don't have anymore here. And a lot of them have been lost to the fur trade in the 1800s. I did actually see one about a year ago on Darby Paoli Road, across from where the creek comes up, and I was shocked. The North American beaver is also something that we don't see much of, but there are some beaver dams in the area. It's the second largest living rodent after the capybara. They're herbivores. They form monogamous bonds. They're a keystone species because take them out. They're a keystone species because they actually create their dams. They change the environment and they create wetlands when they build dams. Because the water sort of builds up. So they actually increase species diversity in the areas where they live. They were almost wiped out completely in the 1700s for fur and meat trade. 3 types of turtles that are endemic to this area. We don't really see box turtles much anymore, but box turtles are in this area. When I was a kid, when there was a rainstorm, you'd see them just crossing the roads after a rainstorm. You'd see them all over. But I think I've maybe seen 1 or 2 in the 15 years I've lived in this area. The river cooter, they're kind of all over the streams, Darby Creek, and of course the snapping turtle, common snapping turtle. So a lot of these animals, well, all of them rely on the health of streams, which 20% of Pennsylvania streams mileage are polluted due to agricultural runoff, mine drainage, urban and road runoff, loss of habitat, land development, municipal and industrial use. And we do really have to think about things like runoff and the chemicals that we spray and allow to be sprayed in the township. It all ends up in the water. So it's very, very important for our health and for the health of everything else that we keep the water clean. Okay, I want to talk about deer. This is the white-tailed deer. It's important to understand, and this is one of the misconceptions, really through messaging, that deer need to be culled because they're starving. I've never, ever encountered in person a deer that looks like these. These are cachectic, they're emaciated deer. You can see the rib cage here. You can see the hip bones here jutting out, rib cage here. And this deer probably has something called opisthotonus as well, which is weakness of the neck muscles. They sort of stargaze due to thiamine deficiency or neurologic. But so this deer has a few different things going on. But these are unhealthy deer. These are not Radnor Township deer. So this is a Radnor Township styled deer. And when I say, you see a fat deer, this has a body condition score. They're ranked 1 to 9. And this deer is actually a little overweight. When you see a healthy-looking deer and there's also foliage on the trees, you say this is not a starvation situation. So if there's culling, it's for different reasons. I believe one of the main reasons for culling in this township is because of motor vehicle accidents. And we really need to be mindful of how we drive so that we don't have to kill all these deer. But we definitely have to be mindful of how we drive. The goal is the ideal number is 3 to 10 deer per square kilometer, which I don't I don't know what the density in Radnor Township is, to be honest. I doubt it's that.
When they started the cull, it was 101. It was 101 deer per square mile. That's why the cull was undertaken 10 years ago. Okay, so the per square kilometer would be certainly over 50.
I would question how those numbers are done. And if they're, double counting deer, how are they? Are they spray painting them when they count them? Do you know what I'm saying? Are they marking them when they count them? Yeah. Yeah, I wonder. That's an interesting number. That's a very high number. So deer don't transmit Lyme. The deer do not transmit Lyme. Deer host the ticks as one of the food sources. The necessary animal for Lyme to be transmitted to the tick, the necessary animal is not the deer, it's the silver-footed mouse. So mice are the necessary animals for the nymphs. Deer are just a food source, and so it's sort of a misnomer that's widely acknowledged today, that calling it the deer tick. But anyway, it's the Ixodes tick. The Lyme-limiting predators are very important in decreasing Lyme. So those would be foxes and things that eat the mice, because that's the main way that we get them. We get Lyme. So the two foxes, the gray fox is not in our area, so I'm not really going to talk about it, but that's a smaller fox. The one in our area is the red fox. It's our local fox. It's a habitat generalist. Woodlands, rolling hills, meadows. It's about 20 to 30 pounds. Male is larger than the female. They're omnivores. They eat mice, birds, insects, amphibians, fruit. They will catch 1 to 2 catches a week of food, and they usually store their food in their dens. They have a high-pitched shriek that certainly everyone in our township should be familiar with. Main reason is I think people mistake it for people screaming at night. They have a very scary shriek. Their main threats are habitat loss, auto kills, and the fur trade, of course, wiped out a lot. So misconceptions about foxes, they don't eat cats, an adult cat. They don't eat little dogs. They're not aggressive to people, and they are not people screaming. I see on the Next Door Neighbor app all the time, people hear them and they think somebody was screaming at night. They're not strictly nocturnal, depending on the season. They can be nocturnal, diurnal, which is awake during the day, cathemeral, which is all day, or crepuscular, which is most active in the morning and early morning and before dusk. So if they're hunting more, if you see a fox during the daylight, it doesn't mean it's rabid. Their hunting hours are longer during times of increased need. Like in the spring, they need to increase their caloric intake because they're nursing, and in the fall, they need to fatten up for the winter because there's scarcity in the winter. So they're, you'll see them during the day more, and that's okay. Foxes are not vermin. They keep the mouse population down, they kill sick animals, they scavenge dead animals, they play a key ecological role, and then the other big misconception is that a fox is not a coyote. People mistake them all the time. This is a coyote, this is a coyote, this is a fox. A coyote is much larger. It's 35 to 55 pounds, almost double the size. Foxes live in dens, and they mate in February. They whelp in April, May, and so that's when you really hear their mating calls most often. They're litters of 4 to 6 kits, and they nurse for 8 to 10 weeks. Everyone should be sure to leave the kits alone. There's a lot of meddling with the babies in this area, so they need to just leave them alone. Even if they have a den in their yard, they just have to wait till they move on, and they will leave. Foxes and cats. So an adult cat, again, and mentioning this because this is a big concern with people, with my clients certainly, where they get worried if they let their cat out. Can you take him out? If they let the cat out, that a fox will go after it. But the fox is actually the one who is more likely to be victimized because a cat has 5 weapons and a fox has 1. So autocorrect, it's supposed to say sarcoptic mange. Although I guess it's sort of sarcastic in a way if you had mange. So sarcoptic mange, Sarcoptes is a type of mite. And these foxes sort of look like zombies. They're very scary looking. Not necessary to call animal control or anything. If all the vets around here, are willing to dispense ivermectin, and it can be put in food each night, and the foxes eat it. It wipes it out completely, and people notice a difference. Every few days, they see the hair growing back. So, bats, there are 11 bat species in Pennsylvania. The one that we see in this area, the little brown bat. The females live in nursing groups in attics and barns. The males live more in rock crevices, loose siding. They're insectivores. Very important for us in insect control because they can eat 1,000 mosquitoes in an hour. They hibernate October through November. White nose syndrome is a fungal infection in bats. It was identified in 2006. The cause, it was postulated that due to stress from human activity, from being roused during hibernation, from having low fat stores, probably due to a smaller food supply. And one of the reasons is probably because of the chemicals that we're spraying and killing all the insects. So they go into hibernation without enough fat stores, and it depletes their immune system, and they get this fungus that kills them. Raccoon, they're omnivores. You hear their mating calls. It's like a trilling between January and March. They give birth to two to 5 pups. Okay, rabies in wild animals can occur in any mammal, from a mouse to an elephant, any warm-blooded animal. Rhabdovirus or lyssavirus in a bat. It's rare for a number of reasons regarding transmission. It could never reach epidemic proportions. It's only transmitted in the last 5 days of an animal's life. But for the purpose of rabies control and rabies vaccine recommendations and everything, we give it a 10-day cushion. So this is complicated to explain, but basically it's only transmitted in the last 5 days of an animal's life if there's possible exposure. So if that animal's alive in 10 days, it wasn't transmitted. The incubation period is 2 to 4 weeks, but it can be anywhere up to a year has been reported. Rabies in our area, this is Region 7, and oddly it's the #1 area in Pennsylvania. It's the southeast, it's Philadelphia area. In Pennsylvania this year, up to September, raccoon is #1, bat is #2, and the cat is #3. So we have to be really, really up to speed on vaccinating and vaccinating ferals as well. Rabies near us. In Delaware County, this year, 3 raccoons and 2 bats. Okay. So the last thing I want to talk about, it touches on my project, wildlife signage. This is a major threat to the animals in our area, and sorry, but I think it's necessary to really see, because seeing is believing, and these are only from the last few months. You've got a lot of foxes in here, which is a real shame. Deer, raccoons, but a lot of foxes. So, Mahatma Gandhi, famous quote said, "You can judge a society by the way it treats its animals." It's something we all need to be mindful of.
Thank you very much, Joan.
Okay. Any questions?
Yes, as you
Yes.
rotate off the Board of Health, have you considered the Shade Tree Commission? The Shade Tree Commission.
You know what? I've actually been thinking about that.
Joan, can you speak to if you see raccoons during the day? Like, that's also, like, if you see raccoon during the day, rabies, same thing I've heard about foxes, but-
That's a great question, Lisa. Raccoons are less crepuscular
Okay.
and have less fluctuations than foxes. Signs of rabies, obviously salivating, the classic, lameness, odd behavior, excessive fear or aggression, or excessive friendliness. Those are signs. But I would be a little concerned if I saw a raccoon walking around after, let's say, probably 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Joan. And I assume that this will be posted. It'll be posting as part of the on the website. Great, excellent. All right. Anybody with next agenda item is new business. Anybody with any new business?
Yeah, so this just kind of came to my attention today, and I'm sorry, Maggie, I don't know if she had to go, but that it just kind of came to my attention today, but apparently it's not exactly new news, but what has been going on at Valley Forge Military Academy. There was a news item in Mother Jones that came out around the time we kind of went on our break that detailed a number of horrifying things. Frankly, the ones that would kind of be of concern to this board are honestly some of the least worrying. The ones that jumped out at me of things that should be concerned to this board are rats, cockroaches, and mold in barracks and in the mess hall, moldy food being served to students. Without going into like too much explicit detail, the general safety of the students was brought into question by former president of the school and a number of officials and former students who have left the school, including the Title IX officer who resigned based on feeling that the school wasn't doing anything about what was going on there. I don't know what authority the township has to do something about that in terms of, again, immediately what should be of concern to this board, the allegations about the conditions of the dormitories and the food is, I mean, at this point, it would be up to us to bring that to the county's attention, which I think we should do. This, again, kind of, I know I'm sort of springing this on everybody, but, and then in terms of the larger safety issues, that's something that, I mean, I'm sort of bringing that up in my capacity somewhat as a citizen for the Board of Commissioners to take a look at, but I would encourage everybody to take a look at that because, it was, I mean, I was horrified by what was alleged in there, both in terms of the number, frequency, and severity of what is being alleged to be going on there, and it is in Radnor Township. So,
Alex, do you know if they brought it to the county for inspection purposes?
So, I mean, they are under the county's jurisdiction for inspections. The last inspection, they were okay. The county, in the same way that the township did when inspections were under us, does have the ability to do inspections based on, particular allegations being made. As I said, I mean, that's sort of almost, when you read everything else that's going on, almost kind of minor relative to the other things that are being alleged in this reporting, which again is not even the first reporting apparently that's been coming out of there. I had no idea that this was going on until about a day ago, but apparently there have been people that have been speaking about this for 5 years, and I don't know why something hasn't been done, or if something hasn't been, but it's seemed, certainly what's being alleged is that it is ongoing.
I have to take that as an FYI, because I haven't heard anything actionable. I've heard disturbing but not actionable, but I keep us informed, and doesn't have to wait till the next meeting. If there's something that comes up, please keep me informed. Okay. Anybody else? I kind of gave you as much as I could give you with Lisa's help on the school district, and hopefully Jenna will be back for the next. And Maggie had to leave, did not have anything beyond what she had already offered up in terms of an update from the Board of Commissioners, which brings us to public participation. Public participation. Please take the microphone, turn it on.
I don't know what to do.
Below there are 2 buttons. There's one that has a voice, right-hand bottom button.
Well, I'm actually pretty loud. Can I just speak? Thank you.
It's because it's on, the TV, and for the viewers at home. Yep.
All right. No, this is very small, but I belong to a neighborhood group on my computer, on my email, and one of the neighbors showed a photo of a very mangy-looking fox. I mean, really, like the one on the screen. And she commented about the fact that she fed the fox ivermectin over a period of time. And then there was an after picture, and the fox looked beautiful, and it was just the way we expect it to look. So the whole idea of the ivermectin really actually is a very good one, and that's my whole observation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am, your name again for the minutes.
So am I supposed to do something?
Just your name, your name.
Oh, my name.
Yes. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christy Perry. I have to admit I'm a little confused. When I called earlier about a rat problem, they said the Radnor Health Department was no longer here. So maybe they left, but you're different?
We're not the health department.
You're the Board of Health.
We're the Board of Health.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm a little more up to speed on what the Delaware County Health Department is doing. I'm making a comment regarding the fall vaccines and COVID. I apologize, I wasn't here in time to hear what you said. Is the assumption that it's for children and you're in favor of it? For fall COVID vaccines? I don't know, it was here as old business.
I would defer to CDC recommendations. I don't think this Board of Health has any basis for making a recommendation beyond CDC recommendations.
Okay,
we had a COVID update, and that was about.
So if I want to encourage not giving the vaccines, you have no influence over that?
If you want to make the statement.
I will make the statement.
That we will read it into our minutes.
Okay, I will make the statement. I was going to say, why do you continue to have a single focus on this COVID vaccine for children when children have zero chance of death from COVID? And vaccines, like all drugs, have a risk. And kids have so many other bigger issues, like 54% of them have chronic illness. That seems like much greater than any pandemic we've recently had. Also, ever since the fall of 2021, multiple organizations are reporting epic proportions of all-cause mortality higher than ever. Like the CDC is reporting this, the Society of Actuaries, life insurance companies on group life claims, the ONS in the United Kingdom, funeral homes, autopsy reports. All-cause death is up like 40%. Now, I'm not saying it's caused by the vaccines that happened in early 2020, but all of this started in the third quarter, fourth quarter of 2021. And we're not hearing about it because of, I'm thinking that 70% funded mainstream media by the pharmaceutical companies. Disability claims are up. They've come up with a new adult death syndrome to try to explain why adults are just dropping, and children are dropping dead on sports fields all around the world. And they're trying to normalize children having strokes and heart attacks. So I don't know if your pockets are at all being lined by the pharmaceutical companies, if your judgments are clouded. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not completely up to speed on this board. But I came and I still wanted to say something, and I would highly encourage you to research beyond mainstream media and the CDC to truly understand what we're suggesting we put into our children that has greatly large risks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Hello, my name is Arthur. Last name is Sherry. And yeah, I completely agree with that last woman who spoke, all of her comments. I think that's so important to really have differing perspectives when it comes to health, right? There is the pharmaceutical approach where we can treat symptoms, we can give vaccines, but I think we should also really look at the root cause. What causes somebody to get flu-like symptoms? What is the body doing when it gets a flu? It seems like it's releasing something from the body, right? So really considering what kind of fuel we're putting into our bodies. And as someone who substitute taught at a lot of the Radnor schools, if we look at what we're feeding them for lunch, it's a lot of processed foods, a lot of refined sugar, a lot of stuff that really doesn't have much nutritional value. And the body's gonna have a strong reaction to that because it's difficult to digest those things. So then the temperature can raise, flu-like symptoms can happen, and we can call that a number of different things, right? We can call it COVID, we could call it seasonal flu, we could call it maybe monkeypox, dragonpox, whatever names we want, but there really seems to be a difference in terms of people, how frequently they get the flu when they eat certain foods. For myself, for instance, for my first 25 years on the planet, I was constantly having flu-like symptoms. And I was also eating a lot of processed foods, a lot of candy, things that are served in the school cafeterias. So I think if we really focus on fresh ingredients, fresh local produce, where we have like the Willows Community Garden, where we can grow fruits and vegetables there, and maybe be giving our kids these vitamins that can make them stronger. So focusing on how we can make them stronger. And I love the presentation tonight by the students. I thought they really gave some amazing, valuable advice, and sleep deprivation is a huge issue that I see at all of the schools in Radnor. If we look at their schedules, they're in school for about 8 hours a day. And they also have extracurriculars and sports and work and family obligations. So giving them homework on top of that seems like that's gonna make them stay up even later and not get sleep. So maybe we have to consider eliminating homework for these students so they can have time to relax and, you know, hang out with their family, friends, do things that are good for their mental, physical, and spiritual health, and not just be doing multiple choice assignments or looking at screens all night, because that's gonna really diminish their quality of sleep. And I would love to maybe hear some of your thoughts in terms of how much quality of sleep a student, anyone really needs a night. And do we think, based on their schedules currently, that they're gonna be able to hit those hours? Because the feedback that I get is a lot of the students are getting between 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night, and sometimes even less than that. And that, to me, is just gonna lead to a lot of illness. You can call it the flu, you can call it all kinds of different things. But if we're getting their sleep right, if we're getting their food right, if we're getting their relaxation right, their nature time right, then they're gonna be really healthy. And they're not gonna need to see, you know, doctors, because they're gonna feel strong and good. Thank you.
Thank you. With that, we're 25 minutes over time, so I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
Second?
Well, second.
Thank you. The meeting is adjourned.